I've been alone too long in COVID lockdown, and Donald Trump has made me mean. And when he says, if it's Sunday, I say you're an idiot.
As long as you're not throwing anything at the TV.
Yes. Yeah.
But you said it. You said Dems in disarray. Gotta love the DC press. New Democratic president post-approval rating 15 points higher than his GOP predecessor, and ABC frames it as bad news. I mean, it's just, it is endless, right? We were talking about the Axios headline, like, ooh, Biden eye-popping, tax rates. You're like, oh, really? The ones from 2 years ago? Like, it's just, they're just searching
There are a handful of polls out yesterday. Obviously, Biden's coming up on the 100 days. I think we're in such a polarization. No one's at 100 days is going to be at 68% like JFK or people used to be. But Biden's numbers are super strong. Yeah. Particularly on the pandemic numbers, they're through the roof. Bipartisan support. If Biden and the press just hasn't really figured out how to deal with Biden. This has been an insanely successful 100 days, unlike anything we've seen in modern history. Just because he was facing so many hurdles. If Biden were a Republican, I mean, they'd be dubbing him the new Reagan. There's no question.
Well, it goes to your point, Eric, about polarization, though, and the poison of Fox News. When they did the two, ratings, as you say, were pretty amazing. But in the bubbles, of words, of people that support him, people that don't support him, the biggest things in the bubble of people that don't support Biden were not true and were Fox memes, right? Were cognitive problems, border crisis, things that don't exist except, they're complete lies. Joe Biden does not have, old and weak. I mean, just things that are Fox memes that are not. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah. I was promised a gaffe presidency. I've been very disappointed in the lack of stumbling and falling and verbal miscues. Remember all last year we were told this was going to be a train wreck.
Right. And I mean, as you said, Biden scores record high approval rating among young voters, according to a new poll. You said, I'm chuckling. Remember the avalanche of Democratic primary stories about Biden's youth voter problem? Right? I mean, you went on, you said, hang on one second. Hang on. Hold, please. But you said, Biden now has a 10% higher favorability rating than Bernie Sanders in a poll among 18 to 29-year-old Democrats. One of the bigger surprise stories of 2021 has been the evaporation of the Sanders wing of the Democratic Party. But again, that was all we ever heard, right?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, is that Biden can't get the youth vote, only Bernie can. It's just, and there's been no reporting on this, on his youth rating, right?
And if you go back to the polls, I mean, this has been true for a while. There's basically three Americas: Democratic, Independent, and Republican. And 2/3 of the country are on board with Biden. They're on board with his changes. They're on board with all of this stuff. And then you've got 35% of the country that opposes him. But the press still views him through this prism of just being two Americas. And so if Republicans don't like him, look, if most Republicans don't like Biden, they're only 35% of the country. It doesn't really matter.
And you were saying 90% approval rating among Democrats. There's no stories about Biden voters like there were about, Trump voters love Trump. There were like a million of those stories. But you talked, just while we're on 2016, about Glenn Greenwald reliably is just like every Republican right-wing talking point. And you said he's defending Matt Gaetz. He's attacking the Me Too movement. Does every alt-left player who filled up my timeline in 2016 with Greenwald garbage now want to apologize for championing this clown? I mean, how is he any different? He's a Fox News favorite now, right?
Oh yeah, he's Tucker Carlson's best friend. And what's really sad about the Greenwald story is, I view him as kind of a clownish figure. He's basically a professional troll. But what's disappointing is he was embraced in 2016 because he hated the woman candidate with a ceaseless fire. It was that misogyny that opened the door, to welcome him as this champion of the progressive movement.
Yeah, and he's not a progressive. You
and I and lots of other people were warning in 2016 that you don't want to do this, but a lot of people did, because the defining characteristic of that campaign was hatred for Hillary. So whoever hates Hillary, come on in. We'll create this big tent and we'll hate her together. And now, obviously he's just a MAGA guy.
Well, yeah. And as you said, misogyny is a hell of a drug, man.
It
But
really is.
it's just, the framing on every once again, GOP compromise on infrastructure is for Biden to scrap 70% of his proposal. I mean, the framing just itself drives me insane, Eric.
Oh yeah. I just put up a column on PressRun this morning about DC press chasing unicorns, right? Moderate Republicans offering compromise. If Democrats and Joe Biden are pushing a $2.3 trillion infrastructure bill, and these moderate Republicans come back with a plan that's $600 billion, that's not serious. They're not serious people. I mean, it's a joke. But the coverage last week was, you get the sense there's this back and forth negotiation because the press is so obsessed with bipartisanship. And these people are not moderates. Every one of these people voted with Trump 90% of the time for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
That's not a moderate. But the press is in love with this idea that they're the thoughtful centrist at the heart of the Republican Party, and they want to work across the aisle, and we're going to get things done. And it's a total fantasy because, as we know, the Republican Party is completely off the rails.
Well, because you complete me. You wrote a piece the week Fox News craves street violence in Minneapolis, furious about the Chauvin verdict. I mean, everything I was saying last week, Eric, and then sure enough, here today, support for guilty verdicts in Derek Chauvin's trial plummeted among Republicans in the days following the trial, right? So the poll taken just after the guilty verdict, 61% of Republicans approved of the verdict, 29% disapproved. Over a longer period, till Saturday, from the CBS poll, 46% says the jury reached the wrong verdict, 54% said it was the right verdict. I mean, because Fox News had time to tell them why they didn't actually watch a murder with their eyes and justice was done. Fox News had time to tell them why it was bad. Right. I mean, that's
really interesting. I hadn't seen that. I know overall, I think it's that same poll. Majority of Republicans, 56%, still think the verdict was correct, which is kind of odd because Fox News spent last week saying it was mob justice.
Well, 54 among all respondents, 75% say right verdict, 25% say wrong. But what I'm saying is, right after the verdict, 61% of Republicans approved. After you gave Fox a few days, only 46% said they reached the wrong verdict. The wrong verdict. 54 said it was right.
Their coverage of the trial was very interesting because during the trial they didn't really care about it. There wasn't much coverage. They didn't carry it live the way MSNBC and CNN did because they didn't really have anything to grab onto because there was. The police had turned against Chauvin. There wasn't liberals versus the police. It was everyone versus Chauvin. Yeah. And so they didn't really care about the trial. What they hated was that, Black activists were allowed to claim a victory and justice was served. And then it was mob justice. Oh, the jurors were intimidated and all this stuff.
Right.
And
they were like, we don't get our footage of angry Black people rioting. You can feel it.
They want, that's the other point. They wanted violence. They wanted burning and they wanted to blame Biden. That was what they were ready to do with a not guilty verdict. All of that was robbed from them. And so they kind of lashed out and said it was mob justice.
Exactly. They wanted to go look at all these angry Black people. Look, because of Biden, they're coming to your house to kill
you. Absolutely.
You said robbed of the chance to demonize the Black Lives Matter movement, robbed of the chance of scaring viewers into thinking community activists would soon be banging down their doors and ransacking their main streets. Fox News reacted to the verdict with frustration and rage. But the larger point you always make, Eric, they're not just a conservative media outlet. They are driven by a bloodlust for conflict, and they feed off civil unrest if they can cast progressives as villains. I mean, it's just on every subject, COVID, whatever. They are just exist to stir up division and bloodlust. You're right. I mean, it's...
Yeah, and as I pointed out in that column, and, it wasn't just Fox News, every conservative media outlet, and it is a billion-dollar industry, they all hit the exact same message minutes after the Chauvin verdict. And that's just classic propaganda. And as you point out, it's classic propaganda that works. 61% of Republicans looked at that verdict, said, yeah, that's about right. And then 3 days later, 15% of them changed their mind. Gee, wonder why that happened.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that's
just propaganda. That's the definition of propaganda.
Right.
I mean, and they're saying, Biden's the one that doesn't want unity, wants division. You're like, wait a minute, what? Like, we were actually united on the Chauvin verdict, and then you're right. Give the conservative media bubble their time to work their, no, this is why it was wrong, and you're mad about it, and it's just...
Right. Right. This is why that video didn't show exactly what it showed.
Right. Right. Can you, Sean, give me cut 9? This is what I mean. The Lindsey Grahams of the world, right?
Ugh.
They're going to buy into somehow Biden is a wild-eyed socialist now. Here he is.
Well, during the campaign, he made us all believe that Joe Biden would be the moderate choice, that court packing was a bonehead idea. All of a sudden, we got a commission to change the structure of the Supreme Court, making D.C. a state. I think that's a very radical idea that will change the makeup of the United States Senate. AOC said his first 100 days exceeded her expectations. That's all you need to know. I like Joe Biden, but I'm in the 43%.
Why don't they ask any of them, what about your
Yeah.
party's drift to actual fascism? I mean, everything Biden is for is wildly popular with the public. Then I guess a huge percentage of us are socialist, if that's the case, right?
Well, Republicans if we go back to the 100 days. I mean, they have not landed a glove on Biden. They are confused. They don't know what to do. They thought this was going to be Obama too, but oh wait, he's not black. What are we going to do? How are we going to create this anger and frustration? It's also fascinating, the campaign. Lindsey Graham looked at a 70-something-year-old white man and assumed, oh, Joe Biden's a moderate. He didn't run as a moderate. If you read the platform, if you read his speeches, he was the left to Hillary's campaign, whose campaign was the left to Obama's campaign. If you paid attention, you knew exactly what the Biden administration was going to be.
He's doing everything he ran on, Eric. He's doing everything he said he was going to do. Yeah.
But it's so interesting, what class and race in America. People looked at him and said, oh, he looks like my grandfather. He'll be a moderate. Well, that's not what he ran as, and that's not how he's governing.
Right. And by the way, you know who was for D.C. statehood? Barry Goldwater and everybody in the Republican Party at a certain time. Michael Steele talked about it yesterday, that he was behind pushing for D.C. statehood. They used to care about no taxation without representation.
Oh, well,
right? Yeah.
That was a long, long time ago.
Yeah, it's in a world far away. Well, anyway, all right. Eric, it's just to make my life a living hell. Travis made you come later today because of Frank Flaguzzi, and I was about to burst. Don't do it again, Travis. I can't. I need Eric right away on Monday.